Shalom uvracha. Nadav and Avihu, the names of the two sons of Aharon. Although they are not major characters in the story of the Torah, at the same point, we all know their names. And we know their names because of the tragedy that happens in this week's parasha. It's Bayom Shemini, it's the 8th day. It's supposed to be celebratory. They're opening the Mishkan. It's successful. Hashem shows himself to all the people. He shows there's going to be a cloud. There's going to be Shekhinah. This is a major step in the Jewish people becoming who they are destined to be. It's a very happy day. And at the end, Nadav and Avihu, for whatever reason, and there's a lot of discussion about what the reason is, are tragically taken, consumed by fire. And it's a devastating blow to Aharon, and of course to Moshe, his brother, and to all of Am Yisrael. And all we could say about it is it's a tragedy. But there's something that we have to look at, and we have to analyze, and we have to understand. Because there's something interesting that comes out of this tragedy. Nadav and Avihu, somehow, whether what they did was right or wrong, become something symbolic for us. As I started with, their names Nadav and Avihu mean something to us. It's very significant. Even though they don't necessarily accomplish a great deal in terms of what we see them do in the Torah, their names are very significant. They evoke a very strong emotional sense in us, and therefore their significance is much greater than their necessary accomplishments. In fact, Aharon has two other sons who take the mantle of Nadav and Avihu and go on and serve to be Kohanim, Elazar and Itamar, and they are very, very important. But truth be told, if you ask most people to name Aharon's children, I think they know Nadav and Avihu first because of the tragedy. And I think there might be a lesson to be learned here, in that Nadav and Avihu, in what they are not accomplishing, in the tragedy, in the loss, somehow take on an outsized meaning, and therefore maybe fulfill a purpose in a very different way. And this is very, very significant. Think about it. We know Nadav and Avihu. We use them in our community at our most holy moment, at the beginning of reading the Sefer Torah on Yom Kippur, the most holiest of days. We remind ourselves of Nadav and Avihu and the tragedy. So every year in our community, that the names Nadav and Avihu may have significance, have purpose. They accomplish something even in their tragedy, even in what they were not able to fulfill, even in the potential that was there and not the actual. And I think this is very, very significant for us to teach us a very important lesson. Often we have to deal with tragedy, with unexplainable loss, with a potential that doesn't get fulfilled. And it's very challenging for the human mind to grapple with this, to understand, to make sense of it. And the truth is, we can't fully make sense of it. But perhaps when we take a look at Nadav and Avihu as the model for tragedy and loss, we see that there's a potential in the lack of potential being fulfilled. There's something about the tragedy that provides a meaning way beyond what a person could have accomplished in their lifetimes. And although that doesn't make it better, although we still grieve over the tragic loss of life and the lack of fulfilled potential of that life, at the same time, we appreciate that there's a possibility that there's some other meaning that Hashem had for those people. And at this time of year, I think this is a very poignant and an important message. This past week, we commemorated Yom HaShoah, the unexplainable loss of millions of Jewish lives. And we can't make sense of it. At the same time, we know that we've learned tremendous lessons from the Shoah, and Medinat Israel was built on the back of the Shoah. And whereas that doesn't mean that the lives were exchanged in order that we could learn, or in order that we can have Medinat Israel, at the same time, we can't miss out on the fact that those two things are true. And similarly, this week we have Yom HaZikaron, where we commemorate the fallen soldiers and the victims of terror and all those who've given their lives over the course of years so that we have Medinat Israel. And in all of those situations, there's a tragedy, there's a loss of life. But perhaps the message that was given to Moshe and to Aaron, Bikrovai ekadesh, with those that are close to me, I am sanctified, says Hashem. Perhaps that's the same message here. The message of a tragedy is a tragedy. We don't excuse it. We don't say it's okay. We don't even say it's for that purpose. But there's some level of nechama, of comfort, in knowing that it's possible that in a tragedy we can live on in ways that we couldn't if we didn't have that. And although it doesn't make it okay, it can provide us with some degree